Welcome to the Mendocino Local Agency Formation Commission meeting of Monday, November 6th. First order of business. Call to order, please.
Called and roll call.
And roll call. Excuse me.
Commissioner Orth.
Here.
Commissioner Hamburg.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Here.
Commissioner Doble.
Present.
Commissioner McNerlin.
Present.
Commissioner McCallan. Here. Commissioner Rosenberg. Here. Commissioner Ward.
Here. Thank you. First, I'd like to observe a moment of silence and remembrance of the great losses of life, property, and environment in River Valley. As well, I wanted to add Gabe Madrigal, who passed away a few weeks ago as well, Holly's husband. So if we could just take a few moments, please. Okay, thank you.
Chair, a quick correction. It was Gabriel.
Gabriel? Well, I knew him as Gabe.
Okay.
Okay, public expression. Commission welcomes participation in the LAFCo meeting. Any person addressing the commission on a subject within the jurisdiction of LAFCo which is not on the agenda. Is there anybody in the public who would like to address the commission? Seeing none, we'll go to other business. This would be special district alternate seat. Uma?
Thank you. So this is a report and a request for approval of the timeline for doing the alternate special district seat election process. The vacancy created by Commissioner Silver's resignation from the special district expires on December 31st of 2018. We've put together a timeline that will accommodate the new election for this year. So it would start in mid-November. Again, distributing the nomination forms out to the special districts. I wanted to note also that under the current schedule, we would need to do a second election that would start in mid-2018 to fill that seat. So one of the options, I believe this has been done in the past, was to put an option on the nomination form to hold for that election term to be about 4 years and about 7 months. So it extended out a little bit. And hopefully that would coincide with the election process being streamlined with the gubernatorial election process, I believe.
Presidential and gubernatorial, yeah.
Thank you. So what's before you today is a report on that, a timeline, and then a request for direction to staff regarding that extension.
Is there any questions on the timeline? That's on the second page.
I have one quick question. Is AB 979 LACLI that's just been signed into law that apparently governs this process been reviewed?
I have not reviewed that, no.
We might need to review that now because it's a new law that pertains to this very subject.
Okay.
So we might have to put a hold on this for our next meeting.
John?
We could probably give direction to the executive officer to implement the proposed process unless it's in conflict with the legislation cited.
Okay. Last meeting we talked about developing a policy for special district elections. Is this something that we want to implement as a policy for future, or apparently there was the special district committee doesn't meet as often or comes up with it, so we were going to come up with something else, John?
Well, I think the special district selection committee would be a representative of every one of the districts.
Right.
So that's impractical to think you'll get them together
right.
and have a quorum.
So I'm just bringing it up because we discussed this as a policy last time, and if this is suffice, we'll move forward with this.
What we have is special districts are being brought into compliance by 2020 with new cycles for their elections. And so in this process, for instance, I've just been reelected, well, Yes, actually, there was no one who filed against our 3 incumbents, so we've all been appointed, reappointed as of November election day, taking office in December, but we'll be serving 5 years to make up for the differential to come into compliance with that 2020 law. So in the next election, those new directors will also add, or current serving directors will extend an extra year. So I think LAFCo does need to make sure that both this, I suspect this LACI law might be addressing that. And so that's why we need to review it. But I do agree with John, we can move forward. I do support the 1 election with the extended term because, as you know, I had to come back into LAFCO to take over a seat, and then I had to stand for election within 6 months again. Mm-hmm. And it was a very quiet election the second time. So I think the districts don't respond that well to a sudden replacement election followed by another election within 6 months. We didn't get much response from that process. I also do agree that our selection committee is very hard within this county to ever form a quorum at any one place at any one time, and that has been a continued issue with the selection committee process. So I agree with Uma's process as we have done before, in which she'll conduct the election for the special district selection.
Anybody else on the timeline? So Tony, you agree with John. Is that a motion?
Also move.
Second.
As stated.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call, please.
Commissioner McNerlin?
Aye.
Commissioner Doble?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez? Yes. Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamburg?
Yes.
Commissioner Orth?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes, thank you. Good suggestion, John, thanks. Okay, consent calendar. Following consent items are expected to be routine. Does anybody want to pull one off? Nothing? Okay. That's me too. So I'll entertain a motion to approve. Yes, John?
Sorry, I was asleep for a minute. On item 4C, the contract renewal with the city.
Yes.
It provides that it's either the CPI, but not to exceed 5%. And it looks instead like someone just multiplied 5% and added that without regard to what the CPI is. So I think we should review what was the actual CPI, because that's what the increase is supposed to be.
Yeah, I brought that up the last time with the, what was the gentleman's name, Beth? That we dealt with?
Kerry Randall?
Kerry. And he said he put that in, and I didn't see it either. I did look, it was a $20 increase, and that probably is 5%.
Right, and I
I don't think
the
CPI is 5%. Maybe in Africa or something.
Well, and it depends which CPI that you use.
Right. U.S. city average, San Francisco Bay Area, or
Western states,
Western
or whatever,
states.
but in any case, it's not going to be 5%.
So if commission wishes, I could go back and get that changed and brought, because this doesn't go into effect until January 1. Bring it back in December.
Yeah,
Is that okay?
I agree with the chair.
Okay. And then the other thing that he brought it up, I don't, it was in the last agreement that I'd had a little bit of problem with, but there's a 90-day out clause in the agreement on both parties for whatever reason. They could kick us out with giving us 90-day notice. So I'm going to try to bring that up again. I was a little concerned about that before, because it'd be difficult for 90 days to find a new office for all our stuff here in Ukiah. So I'm going to see if I can get that resolved. And just heads up, we will have to provide them a certificate of insurance. Yes.
Every time that's renewed, I automatically
You
just walk it
automatically
over
give
to them,
too?
yeah.
Okay. So we'll pull that item and for next month. The other three? Motion?
I'll make a motion. We can consent with that one poll.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of item 4A, roll call, please.
Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamburg,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Doble,
Yes.
Commissioner McNerlin, Commissioner Ward.
Yes. Okay, item 5, public hearing. Public hearing to consider adoption of a resolution approving the City of Fort Bragg and the Municipal Service District Number 1 Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence Update. Uma, I'll let you handle this one.
Thank you. There is a correction. It should be Municipal Improvement District.
Municipal Improvement District, correct, yes. MID.
So this is on August 7th, during the regular commission meeting, we held a workshop on the Fort Bragg and Municipal Improvement District MSR SOI update. We had some feedback from the commission that directed staff to clarify the discrepancy between the city sphere of influence and the district boundary that's located south of the city limits. And we were also directed to review verbiage throughout the document for value statements and then consolidate the list of capital improvement projects. We have addressed the commission's comments in the document, and it has been provided to the city for review. They had no additional comments. Regarding the discrepancy between the city sphere of influence and the district boundary, those areas consist of 2 residential areas that are south of the city and the Noyo Harbor area. Those areas receive sewer and water from the city, and primarily to support harbor financial commercial areas and failed septic systems for residential areas and surrounding the harbor area. The city has stated that they're not able to provide a full range of services to those areas at this time, which is why they have not been included in the sphere of influence for the city. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, first of all, there was a proof of publication with the Fort Bragg paper.
Yes.
And do you want separate motions on the CEQA versus the actual, or one motion take care of both?
I think one motion would be fine.
Okay, well, I'll open it up to public hearing at not 10:14, but 9:14. Anybody wish to address the commission on the item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing at 10:15. Bring it back to the commission. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is a couple of issues. One is not including areas within the SOI for the city that are served by the district, because you know, logically it would seem that those areas would at least be within the SOI and considered for future annexation. And the explanation, well, gosh, we can't provide services, doesn't really wash, because there's actually questions about whether they can provide services to the mill site in terms of water, I believe. But they have no qualms about, you know, of course the mill site I think is already within the city limits. But not to drag it out, but I would like to see the commission adopt a finding that the issue of the SIO for those areas at least be reviewed during the next MSR. So there's a fuller discussion of why or why not. The statement that they're in the municipal service district in order to you know, enhance development and so forth doesn't really wash in Noyo Harbor if you talk to Dusty Dillon. And he's told me there's one business that can't get a water connection, and maybe they're slightly outside the district. But anyway, I think there's issues relating to, and you have to, I believe you have to drive through the city to get to Noyo Harbor. The same may be true for the area south of the Noyo Bluffs Park. So again, I would appreciate a finding or determination that the issue of including those areas within the SOI be reviewed in the next MSR.
And that's 5 years from now?
Correct.
So we have to have that in the records so that we can bring that up. Hopefully you're the EO at that time and remind us.
Well, I mean, if that's acceptable to the commission, then one sentence could be added.
Okay, that's true. Tony?
I strongly support what John just said. I was going to bring up similar issues with the Harbor District. I think that with the current federal administration, we'd be in arrears if we weren't looking at the impacts to the citizens of Fort Bragg through the operations of an offshore oil or gas lease sale that could be coming from the current administration soon. And I think the Harbor District will play a very critical role because of onshore facility issues and the fact that under the original lease sale 91 issues, Mendocino County made adequate challenges on the onshore facility issues, and so the lease program has been changed to actually come up with monies to mitigate those issues. So if we're going to have an adequate voice in those issues, the city of Fort Bragg in particular, and because of the issues John mentioned, the fact that services are already provided to the Harbor District. The Harbor District has been making noises before this commission. I think they're a qualifying DUC. I would certainly, and I see the city has very good planning staff. They have an annexation plan. I think we would need to really review their annexation plan, and when we look at these issues of should there be a future annexation proposal, I think we're going to have to address this particular duck with the city as something that needs to be part of that annexation process. You know, that's my opinion. I think data in the future should support that, I hope. But I do think it's a larger issue. We were looking at the SOI for the Harbor District and maybe extending it to the watershed. That watershed has great impact to the water system and water supply to the city of Fort Bragg. There are strategies we can be looking at as a LAFCo to help these processes move forward. So we're talking about within a 5-year period, I'd be open to, should any of these issues arise, that we would look at the city's ability to provide services to the Harbor District in relation to some of these issues. I think we need to be aware that these issues are probably coming within the 5-year period.
Okay, you got that too, Carrie?
Commissioner North, could you define annexation of what?
Well, it's already within a service area, so they're already providing service. They also, as a duck, have more than 7 potential electors to vote. I do have issues with the cities where they're providing services and have potential, and it's an economic area that is underserved in the sense of economics, and yet they're paying the infrastructure costs as ratepayers, but they have no actual vote always within all the issues that impinge upon that area. I think that's why ducks were brought forward by the state legislature, and that's why they attach ducks to an annexation process, and I think that's only becoming more evident in state laws that are being passed. And so I think because we regulate the annexation process, we should really pay attention to these issues moving forward. So they're already getting water and sewer service. I imagine there are mutual aid agreements with the sheriff's office that the police are also. The Fort Bragg Police Department is probably responding on calls. What other services? The city has quite a few employees. They have a great grant program. Matter of fact, I think the city of Fort Bragg provides some of the best grant services to their constituents. The Harbor District, I think, would greatly be enhanced by similar support. So I think the issues of annexation in the Harbor District moving forward should be at least reviewed in their annexation plan, which the city does apparently have, and they renew and review it. So I think they should at least, prior to our next MSR review, look at this issue a little more in detail.
Tony, what do you think the Harbor District would think of that, being annexed?
Well, that's why you bring up the issue.
Okay.
Well,
Gary?
and I would just like to comment that on the Board of Supervisors, what would you say, radar screen for future planning, and especially in the coastal area. We just finished the Mendocino Town Plan,
Right.
hopefully, we're on our way.
20 years later, yeah.
Yeah. But I know that on our radar screen is looking at the harbor area and going through a process for an amendment along with the coastal plan. So, you know, it's,
Is it on your radar screen?
yeah.
Good. And I think prior hearing, I mentioned it's really between the county and the city to decide, but the Harbor District really does need support.
You
So
brought
I
that
thought-
up, you brought that up in the past too, when we did the MSR for the Harbor District. Carol?
I was concerned because when I read the financials, they all look very healthy, and yet there was this mention of the major deficit that they're facing this year. And there was no way of seeing what that deficit entailed and why they would have such an enormous deficit after they've been doing well for the last couple of years. So I was just curious about that and wondering if that is something that we have, that we should look at.
I think they had a plan to take care of that. It was a change in some kind of accounting. John?
Well, it explains that it's due to an accounting error.
Right, accounting.
And that resulted in the general fund having to repay the water and wastewater enterprise funds, but it doesn't say anywhere how much
Yeah.
it repaid. It doesn't say what the faulty formula was or what the new formula was, and it might be important to include those numbers. And it does say that this is expected to result in an ongoing general fund shortfall for, it sounds like, several years. And yet we do have all the financial statements that show everything is rosy, but then kind of it comes out in dribs and drabs that, oh, there is this accounting error. And it just seems like, you know, one paragraph up front explaining all that would probably be helpful, but maybe it's too late to
Yeah,
do
we
that.
should have brought that up at the workshop. Well, we're gonna be looking at this in 5 years from what Tony would like to recommend us to look at, so.
Uma's been trying to, are you trying to get recognized?
I would like to make a point of clarification. If you look at the map on page 30 of your packet, it does show that the harbor district, or the harbor area itself, is within the sphere of influence for the city. It's the residential areas that are on to the east and then also to the south that have failing or possible failing systems. And so those are the areas that are within the sphere but not within the district. I mean, other way around, within the district and not within the city sphere.
Would it be possible if we do approve this today to get the answer on the accounting error? So we could be just updated on that and put it on our radar again, if we approve this?
We could. Another option would be to continue it and to address it, and then I think that might be cleaner to include
Okay.
research that a little more, add some language to the document.
I just hate delaying the
Could that be
MSR.
done as like a little addendum to, so that you rewrite this?
We could just include a paragraph in the document.
Okay. All right, I hate delaying these darn things, but. Any other questions on the MSR, SOI? Yes.
So that's not the accounting error that's referenced on 2-7. That's a separate error.
No, it is. That is the same.
It's the same error.
And we just want
We just
to
don't know what
elaborate on that?
We
or-
don't know what the effect would be. Does it affect the financial statements? Because there wasn't no discussion on how much that accounting error would affect the financials,
Yeah.
even though they're in good shape. I would like to comment for the audience is that if you really want to know about Fort Bragg other than this accounting issue, you should read this MSR. It's very well and written. It's got a lot of detail. You can really learn a lot about the city of Fort Bragg and the district. It's well done. Like
One simple change on page 51 of 95, just change under public education, college level, currently listing College of the Redwood.
Mendocino College.
It's now Mendocino College.
John?
I did have a couple of questions. You know, we had discussed last time certain comments that were more, you know, value statements rather than necessarily objective fact. And on page 35, 2.5, financing, the first sentence, even if it were true when written, it's kind of outdated. It discusses how local governments are still suffering from the economic shortfall, which was like 8 years ago. And I think that entire first sentence really doesn't add anything and could be deleted.
Where was that again?
2.5.
Page 35 of 95, 2.5, financing, the first sentence.
Well, since we're bringing this back, I agree. That's something we could omit as well. Find it.
And I've got a couple more that, for consideration, that may fit into that a little bit. On page 52, the finance department is responsible for maintaining the financial integrity of the city. Well, you hope that's what it does, but really what it's responsible for is for providing oversight to the city's fiscal management. So I think maintaining the financial integrity of the city by is superfluous. You hope that's the result, but, you know.
Okay, I agree.
And then just one more on page 53, it's sort of similar. The first sentence is kind of like a phrase from a PR brochure, and I would suggest deleting that sentence and moving, this is on 53 of 95, 3.4.1, service overview. I would suggest deleting the sentence at the top of the bullet points and moving the sentence at the bottom of the bullet points up to the top.
So bringing Community Development Department up to the paragraph above the bullet points?
Yeah, they both refer to the same department, but I
Okay.
think the last sentence is a more neutral description of what the department does.
Uma, Beth, you have that?
Yeah,
Okay.
got him. Thank you.
And then on 69, one clarification. This is in the next to the last paragraph. It refers to the district SOI as smaller in size than the city SOI. Well, actually, my understanding, the sphere of influence includes both territory that's already been annexed and territory outside the annexed area that is potentially going to be annexed. Because when we adopt an SOI that is, you know, we say the SOI is coterminous with the boundaries of the existing district. So therefore, the SOI includes the existing city or district boundaries. So, you know, a little wordsmithing to clarify that, assuming I'm accurate in what I think I understand, that the SOI includes all of the territory.
Okay. Uma, do you understand that, what John's referring to?
I think I caught it, yes, thank you.
Okay. Well, I'll say it again. Aside from those little points, it's still a good MSR and people should read it. Carrie?
Absolutely, but all these suggested changes that I think we've agreed upon probably should be brought to the attention of the city manager previous to this coming back.
Do they have a city manager now? An acting one?
They do.
Okay, till February. All right, any other comments? Can always count on John. Thank you, John, for reading it and catching those things. Okay. Since we're not going to approve it, we will bring it back at the public hearing again next month. Is that doable?
I think you have to leave the public hearing open, otherwise we have to.
So leave it open, yes.
re-
Great, okay.
Do you need a motion and a vote on the continuance?
Let's check real quick.
I think so.
All we have to do is continue to a day certain.
So we would continue it to a date certain. That would eliminate the need to renotice it. And I think that, don't believe we need a motion for it.
You don't need a motion?
Don't believe so. But that, I don't know.
Would it hurt? Wouldn't hurt
not
to have
sure.
one, would it?
Well, we will continue the public hearing.
But we could do that in a motion.
It's probably cleaner if you have a motion.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Given it's a public hearing.
Okay.
Kevin, you brought it up. You want to make a motion?
Sure, I'll move we continue the public hearing to a
I'll-
date certain
Second the motion.
with
Very good.
comments
To,
incorporated.
to the next December meeting,
Yeah, December LAFCO, December 4th.
okay? Any discussion on the motion? Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner McNerlin? Commissioner Doble?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamburg?
Yes.
Commissioner Orth?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes. So we'll approve it in December. Thank you. Thanks, John. We'll move on to item 6, workshop items. There are none scheduled for today. Item 7, matters for discussion and possible action. 7A, annual legislative platform development for 2017. Uma, is that part of what you handed out to us as well?
No, that is separate.
That's separate, okay.
So this is in your packet on page 79. This is a follow-up from our last meeting. The commission had requested a red line version of the CALAFCO platform to see the changes that were recommended. And then, so we've included that on page 81 of your packet. And then a clean version is included as part of the resolution starts on page 85.
Okay, so you've given us a strikeout, underline, and then you gave us another one without the strikeout and underline. There's no difference between the two, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, we had pretty good discussion last meeting on this. Is it pretty much the way we decided? Seeing nobody concerned about it? No questions for Uma? Wow, great. Good job.
I would like to make the motion for approval of the annual legislative platform development for 2017.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll do a roll call on this too, please.
Commissioner Orth?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamburg?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Commissioner Doble?
Yes.
Commissioner McNerlin? Commissioner Ward?
Yes, thank you. So we'll go to item 7B, policy amendment for application requirements, tax exchange agreement process. Uma, I'll bring it back to you again.
Sure. This item is also a follow-up from our last meeting. And this direction was to provide a clean copy with the commission's edits included. Those have been included. That's in your packet. The 2 template letters are on page 90 and 91 of your packet. And then the resolution and clean copy of the policy is included on page 92.
Okay, any questions on this? I just had one. What if 2 agencies don't agree? They obviously say, no, we want more, they want less, and there's no agreement at all. Does that still continue the process?
It's not very clear. In the code, I think what happened with the Fort Bragg north of 10 Mile annexation was that there was just an agreement that they would move forward without that. There were no resolutions or anything on file. I think the cleanest thing would be for our record is to have the district, have both entities adopt a resolution saying that no tax share agreement would occur. That would be cleanest for our process.
Okay. So that, but without that, it would be an application that would not be moving forward. John?
Well, and potentially it's, you know, a weakness in the law, but it's my understanding that if there is no agreement on property tax, there can be no annexation.
I think
So
that-
one agency could even say, you can have 100% of the revenue. You know, there's nothing to fight over here. You can get all the revenue on the table, but if there's not an agreement, it just, you know,
There's no
it
annexation.
stops the process.
Right.
There's just an impasse.
And I could see that happening, unfortunately, you know, where two agencies don't agree.
And so that might be a legislative issue, but that is my understanding. The property tax agreement is actually a requirement.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
And maybe that's why we haven't had too many annexations in the valley.
Right. But the agencies can agree that there will be no agreement.
Yes.
And then it could go
Then
forward.
it could go forward.
Right,
And
Okay.
apparently that was done informally for north of 10 Mile.
Yeah.
right.
Okay, so we all understand that. Hopefully we will always have agreement.
Or we will have no annexation.
Okay, any other discussion on the tax share agreement resolution? This is a resolution.
Excellent job by staff.
Yes,
Yes.
And the committee.
And the
Yes,
committee.
Yes,
Yes.
of course.
good job on the committee, yes. Okay, it is resolution. We'll do a roll call, please.
We haven't had a motion in a second.
Oh, yeah.
I make a motion to pass resolution number 17-18-02, making amendments to Chapter 10, Section 4, Policies and Procedures Manual.
Tony, you second it?
I will, as long as we also approve the attached template letter.
Yes, part of my motion.
Okay, good. We have a motion and a second. Do a roll call, please.
Commissioner McNerlin? Commissioner Doble? Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamburg?
Yes.
Commissioner Orth?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes, good. Again, thank you. That's really important. We'll move on to item number 8, information and report items. 8A, work plan, current and future proposals.
We have no updates on the active applications. We still have the City of Ukiah Detachment and Ukiah Valley Sand District service areas. And then we have a pre-application request on file for the Millview County Water District annexation. We did provide a response on the pre-application request and have not had any follow-up yet. We have 3 future projects that have been inquired after. Those have not changed. We have some updates on the work plan. We are ready to bring forward the South Coast and Albion Little River Sphere of Influence updates for workshop in December. So we'll be doing that. The City of Fort Bragg, working through that process. Hopefully next month we'll be able to finish that up. The City of Willits and Brook Trails, we are working through those. We've requested additional information from Brook Trails CSD and are still waiting for that feedback. And then we are also working on the mutual water companies, the profiles for those by staff. We've had a very difficult October for fire agencies, so we've been trying to hold off a little bit, but we'll be contacting them again this month.
Okay, Tony, is there any way you could push a little bit on Brook Trails, SOI, MSR?
I just wrote myself a note.
Okay, and Jerry, maybe
you.
push Willits? Thanks. Any questions on the work plan?
No.
Okay, thank you for the report. We'll move on to 8B, correspondence.
You know, I might make one comment on the fire districts. I'm assuming most, if not all of these districts will have no intention to expand their SOI. There's one or two common issues, well, a number of common issues that apply to all of them. You know, we're all aware there's areas outside of any district boundary, and yet the districts respond. Many of the districts have that situation. It just seems like there's an opportunity to, instead of having an individual report for every individual district, certainly all the template language can be the same, and unless someone has a proposal to actually expand their SOI, it just seems like that whole process could be streamlined for the fire districts. And I don't know if staff sees that the same way, but if they do, we might encourage them to do whatever streamlining seems reasonable.
At one time, John, we talked about, I think Kevin brought it up several meetings back, where it would be nice to see all the SOIs for all the districts and see if there's any areas that are not being served.
Well, we know there are. Well, they're served. They're not within a district or an SOI, but
So can we
still gets
expand their
dispatched.
SOI to take on that area? That was one of the questions we came up with.
Well, we found out with Anderson Valley that they didn't want to be required
Right.
to respond.
But we could bring it up, though, if we know that there's areas that are not being served, and bring up the question, but.
Yeah,
And then Carol?
it's sort of a sore point with the fire districts that the original LAFCo process on SOIs concurrently apparently became their response areas. And so I think the fire districts are kind of leery of seeing expanded SOIs for that very issue because they're already concerned about serving the areas outside of their district boundaries. And so it is an issue with the fire districts.
Well, we're also up here to protect the public interest as well.
Well, fortunately, there is the Mendocino Office of Emergency Management, and it does have the mutual aid agreements and the ability to call in services as seen in the Redwood Valley situation.
Carol, then Carol?
Well, I'm concerned that many of the fire districts simply do not have the capacity to expand. In fact, they don't have the capacity to reach all the areas in their SOI.
So we shouldn't have people build in the mountains because there's no service to them.
Well, technically, one would think that getting insurance, fire insurance for areas in the mountains would be rather difficult.
Yeah.
Because in a sense, they're really dependent on CAL FIRE.
Right.
And CAL FIRE doesn't necessarily serve in the wintertime. So, you know, in a sense, if they haven't got the capacity to expand their area of service, you can't really ask people to take on more than they can chew.
Yeah.
There is also the associated issue of the marijuana issues and regulation, and that is a new dynamic, both for response by the emergency services, but also one of the big issues on annexation is, of course, generally fire districts don't have an economic return in an annexation. There's not enough tax dollars available within an annex area to provide the level of services.
We found that in Anderson Valley.
Right. So, but now, of course, with many, the county is requiring, I believe, 5-acre minimum for commercial. Well, that pushes it out into the unserved areas and into the SOI areas outside of most district boundaries, but not all. And so there might be an economic potential in the future.
Carrie?
We'll see.
Well, I think most of it's been discussed.
Okay. So we're back to John's original question about the SOI and the streamlining. We sort of threw a wrench in that. What do you want to suggest to them that we do then?
Well, again, if we have districts that have no intention of expanding their SOI or no desire to do so, just seems like instead of having individual workshops for every single district, and I think we're dealing with some of the more significant ones up front, it seems like 6 or 8 of these could probably all be done just at once.
Do you have any concerns with that?
Well, the difficulty, I guess, is getting them all along to that point without long delays in between. And there are a few that we were looking at along the 101 corridor in the north part of the county that may benefit from some more significant recommendations, notably Piercy, Long Valley, and Leggett Valley, to cover the 101 corridor. And there was some questions there that we were attempting to work through with the
Were they
districts.
potentially open to having that discussion?
We had sent them a map, and they were going to meet and discuss it, and
Okay.
we got stalled out by fire season.
I'll leave this all in the capable hands of the executive director.
Well, that's good.
But if there are opportunities for streamlining, it'd be great.
I just get frustrated to have these agencies, whether it be a water district or a fire district, it doesn't have the wherewithal to serve the community, and they're basically on life support. And we do need, as a community, find other avenues for revenue so that we can make good improvement. Now, obviously, we had some devastating fires, and I think the fire districts all pitched in and did a great job, including our sheriff department. So, but still, there's areas that I know, Westport or Piercy, that really need help. And then you've got fire districts like Anderson Valley that want to expand, but they don't have the revenue to do it. So it's frustrating as a commissioner up here to try to look out for the best interest of the public, but we have to protect the districts as well. Carol?
I wonder about streamlining is maybe kind of putting a blanket over problems that we look at when we do individual hearings, so that small individual districts can have an opportunity to actually bring their issues to us.
Mm-hmm. That would be nice. I know at CALAFCO conference a couple weeks ago, they talked about a lot of counties are having the same problem, and they're looking at sharing expenses. But this PERS things with the whatnot's going to wipe a lot of them out because of the retirement issues, and so they're trying to come up with other avenues. Now, whether it's CALAFCO gets involved in from a legislative standpoint to change some of the laws for revenue sharing, we don't know yet, but I know it's a problem that a lot of counties as well as ours brought up at the CALAFCO conference. Because we're not unique. There's lots of fire districts and small cemetery districts, whatever they may be, are having difficulties. Carrie?
And you do hear this all the time, and as a representative for the county of Mendocino, both to the Rural Counties Association and then our overall state organization, a lot of discussion around this issue.
And it will continue on. Maybe we can take that marijuana sale revenue, huh? Okay, any other item on correspondence?
No.
Nope. Okay, we'll go on to 8C, Executive Officer Report.
I wanted to report that we did receive a deposition subpoena for records for the Ukiah Valley Sand District and City of Ukiah records on the 2007-2008 municipal service review that was started. So we've spent a lot of time on that in the last couple of weeks, pulling together those documents and getting those ready. As we've been going through documents and files looking for things, we've been doing some file maintenance and management as we go. So that's been the positive. And then following up on public records requests. I think that's all I have for the
We had a
executive.
deadline. Did we meet the deadline to get the information to them?
We did, and nobody showed up to pick up the records, so we are waiting for that. Oh, we have an update, I guess.
Yes, so they were delayed with the recent events, and so we worked out something where I emailed them the information. They didn't have to send someone, so saved
Well, some
costs
of the documents
for
they
them.
were looking at were pretty thick. How are you going to email like that MSR?
It
That
took a little time to
Wow.
split it up and
was
shrink
like
it,
200 pages.
but it still cost less in the end than having someone drive up from the Bay Area or Santa Rosa. I'm not sure where they were from.
I think it's Santa Rosa, Sonoma County.
So we were looking for efficiency of cost in this one.
So
we
did,
hit that.
as my understanding, the City of Ukiah also requested the same documents or different documents?
We've over the last year or two, we've had records requests from Doug Losack at Duncan James and David Rappaport for the representing the city on both sides. They've both been in and out of the office a few different times, and we've had records requests. But this was the first subpoena.
So we're satisfied we're meeting what they are requiring?
Yeah, and I have an open understanding with them that if they require any more information, they can either do the records request, subpoena, or just call.
Okay, good. Anything else with your report, Uma?
No, not at this time.
Okay, committee reports. The executive committee did not meet. Did PNP meet? Okay, so we'll move on to commission reports. I think the most of our report's going to be from CALAFCO, and Kevin, you took some great minutes. I was egging you on, watching you do that, so thank you.
Well, I took a lot of bullet points from each session. I know we did, there were, on the second day, there were 3 breakout sessions, and we each attended a different one. So I think there's reports from all of us on those. But day 1, I attended LAFCo 101, which I'm actually really happy I did.
It's good.
It was really good.
Informative.
It was really good, and it was an opportunity to kind of see how other LAFCOs operate. Which you know, I've had some personal, professional experience in dealing with Sonoma County LAFCO and Marin, but not statewide. And it's quite interesting how you see some of these larger metropolitan areas do things versus some rural counties, how they handle their approach to LAFCO. I definitely, my takeaways were a recommendation that that the commission have an electronic device policy. I thought that was important to take away. When it comes to using our personal devices, emails, whatnot. It was rather interesting because if you're using your personal email and not your agency's email, then that can be problematic because that information is all recoverable. If someone requests your emails and you're using your personal server, they're going to get all of your emails. And you have to turn all of that over. So that was interesting and something I think we should be thinking about how we manage that.
Carrie, your question?
Yeah, I think it's very important for all of us to understand and to develop a policy. So before we leave this agenda item, maybe we can direct our committee to start working on some type of a policy for Mendocino LAFCO.
Hopefully I haven't burned them out yet.
On the same subject, AT&T is offering notebooks if you go with AT&T for that purpose for public officials. Brook Trails is taking advantage of that. So all our electeds now have separate devices with the agency email. I never put email on either my phone or my iPad. I don't get emails on these devices.
Just your other one.
So they can't take it away from me.
And I think for county supervisors, we receive it through our office email. So it is recoverable, even those that you delete.
Yeah.
Okay, Kevin.
Just a couple other bullet points. I was impressed by how they emphasized how important it was for LAFCOs to be proactive and to really analyze what it is that we do and not be so much reactive to what comes forward. And being proactive comes with a cost of having to make very difficult determinations sometimes. And all of us that are elected, have a tendency want to sometimes shy away from that, but it's important for LAFCo to function in a way that we understand that our obligation is for what's best for the whole community, and not just our individual agency or our particular constituency. And I think that was interesting to hear that expressed quite a bit in LAFCO 101.
Gary?
And I think in many ways, our LAFCO has been proactive, and especially when we look at our training that we have had for special districts is really important, and also training sessions that we have held. And to me, that's just as important, because then they understand that LAFCOs, the reason why they were created, what our authority is under state law, and just all of that is really important. So to put money towards that every year, I think, is really key, and especially for special districts.
Well, to add on to that, though, the CALAFCO did a statewide survey asking certain questions about what is the role of LAFCO, what do LAFCOs do, and 75% of the people they surveyed didn't even know what LAFCO existed.
Yeah.
And then they ask him what LAFCO does, and he says it's a bunch of people together that spend money and add bureaucracy. It was pretty funny, some of the things that they had actually a video of people. They're scratching their head. What LAFCO? Is it a comedy club? Or
Yeah, it was. That was it.
That's a good one.
Well, that's about like MCOG too. People just don't,
Right.
Understand the structure and what is mandated by the state. And
So the purpose of the survey, I think, was for CALAFCO to try to come up with some kind of, what do they call?
Communication plan or something?
Yeah, communication plan, to get it out to the communities, not just for Mendocino County, but all counties. To let people know what really LAFCO does and what their purpose is.
It seemed really challenging to me to hear the presenter talk about, branding and sending messages out to the community, social media, having a platform for LAFCO, for your LAFCO. I had a hard time figuring out that obviously they were coming from more of a private sector point of view, where you're marketing your business or you're marketing your idea, and how do you make that crossover into a government agency. But it was interesting. There's also a lot of rules about government agencies and what they can actually put on social media. It has to just be informative. It can't be, politically slanted or whatnot. There's all of these things that they talked about in terms of the social media. And I think it's just something that they brought up as a way forward we should be thinking about.
Gary?
well, it is interesting how many people look at the streamlined meetings and go back to them. And I have heard a lot about LAFCO and MCOG, more about LAFCO, because people will approach me, say, oh, what is that agency? And I really was interested in your proceedings, your MSRs, your SOIs, but, they want more information as to what a LAFCO is and what have you, and find it very interesting. So the taping of the meetings, I think, is essential.
Yeah. So the most effective way to communicate with the public, according to the survey, was by social media. And and Facebook came up, having a Facebook page and things. I don't know how it all ended, whether some of those LAFCOs did raise a hand, but there wasn't
There
a lot
were
of
only
Facebook.
a couple that actually had a
had
Facebook
Facebook.
page, yeah.
Probably
So-
the bigger ones.
Tony?
Yeah, and possibly a vision statement or an organizational statement that's not currently, that explains the operations of LAFCO, why it exists, it's state legislation. But basically an explanation that's right up front on our website would go a long way.
But
And you can adopt that every year, so you can make modifications.
every
to it.
MSR we put out, though, has 2 or 3 paragraphs of what LAFCO does and why we do what we do, which is very important as well for a reader.
Which should make it easy to have a vision statement.
Yes.
So I don't know if you want to talk about the individual breakout sessions, but the one that I attended with, actually with the EO was, I have it here. Oh, I guess while I'm finding this, the other thing that I wanted to point out is each of the sessions was posted on the CALAFCO website. So if you wanted to go and kind of get a pick and choose, had some time and wanted to get a refresher on some things, that information's on the CALAFCO website.
That's right.
Maybe all these slides.
Yeah, a lot of them are the PowerPoints and whatnot.
Oh, okay.
My meeting or my breakout session was associated with commissioners and their interactions with executive officers. And they did this really nice panel of 3 commissioners and 3 executive officers, and they kind of had this back and forth where they each took turns saying, this is what happens, and this is how we feel when this happens, and this is the consequences of doing something this way. And then there were some questions about, is it better to let the EO know ahead of time before the meeting what your comments are, or should, so it was interesting. Some commissioners were like, no, I do it in the meeting. And all the EOs were like, no, please give me your information before the meeting. And so I thought that was really interesting, and I hear that a lot.
And actually, just before this meeting started, Beth made a comment. Do you have something here on the agenda from just Jerry and I talking?
So how did the conversation go after the meeting between you and our EO?
Well, it was interesting. I've got my notes here. I just wanted to say that my takeaways were there actually, maybe we should talk about what the expectation of us as commissioners is for our EO and the chair, and how often they should communicate. Maybe that's a way to kind of keep it going. I think that might help. And I don't know what we do now, and I don't know if we need to give direction for that kind of thing. But that was one of my takeaways, and the other was pretty much everybody felt it was important to have legal counsel at their commission meetings. And I know we don't do that, but a lot of LAFCos do. And so what I took down was that there's opportunity there, but it would require us changing our meeting date to a different day of the month to actually accommodate.
Scott Brown would be willing to come over, but we'd meet at the
Yeah.
same time that Lake County meets, Lake County LAFCO.
But it's also very costly.
It's more expensive,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So this was more about what staff really felt like they needed sometimes that support. Commissioners felt like they needed that support sometimes. But it also has to do with what you're discussing and what program you're on or where you're going with your commissions. It was obviously some commissions clearly had a lot of contentious legal issues that required that regular attendance. So anyway, that's my report.
I just want to add before Jerry goes into his, it was 250 people there at the CALAFCO. I think there was only a handful of counties not represented. It was interesting that there's only, out of the 58 counties, only 30 counties have special district representation. Now, I believe there's going to be a bill coming forward to require all the LAFCOs to have special districts on their dais, with their whatever we call us, commission. So that was pretty interesting, and then of course it was pretty ugly weather down there at San Diego. So
Was it?
Well, actually, it was either hot and then it started to rain, so it was like a little bit of.
but it was a nice hotel, and I think we did pretty well for Mendocino County having 4 people there. There was only quite a few that only had 1 or 2. And then I would like to say that our Estelle.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to ask that. I got it right here.
She resigned from running, so what's his name? Bill Conley was the only vote, so that's what we voted for. And then Deborah Lake out of Humboldt was voted in as the special district. She's somewhat related to the fire districts up there, so we have somebody somewhat local. Bill Conley's from Butte County.
Yes, he is. County supervisor.
But Estelle had a sister that had some problems. She was not even there. So it was real helpful that Virginia Bass came up to me beforehand and told me that she was no longer going to be accepting the nomination. So anyhow, Jerry, you want to add? What came out of it?
I really enjoyed LAFCo 101. I think for being one of the newer guys on this thing, it gave me a lot of opportunity to sit there and learn a lot of information all at once and find out I wasn't alone. There's a lot of people that get thrown in there, and so it was kind of nice to. And then I guess in that same class or same breakout session, they talked about where LAFCOs are located. Some are still in the county, some are on their own, and then that kind of segued to the one, show me the money. I guess I went to the breakout section. I honestly don't think I learned anything new. The folks that had some ingenious ideas, it sounds like we're kind of all in the same boat. LAFCOs are, unless you're LA that has a lot of money down there, you pretty much, everybody joins forces and you try to figure out how you're going to make money. And you can't make too much because you're making it off a lot of the groups. So it's, so honestly, I don't think I took as much away from that as the other one session I went to is one on islands. I guess they talk about these little unincorporated islands inside some large municipalities. They gave Fresno as an example, but it sounded like kind of similar that when the money's good, everybody wants to reach out and scoop property up. When the money's not so good, everybody kind of looks the other way. But like Kevin said, all of these are on the website, and they said that whatever wasn't before the conference would be at the end of the conference. So if you get on there, you can download those. And again, it was just really interesting to talk to folks from other areas as far as what they're going through and stuff. And I did hear that a lot of commissioners with their EOs, as far as getting with them ahead of time, if because I got to tell you, I kind of learn a lot from this exchange here with everybody here. I mean, honestly, sometimes I'm not used to the level of detail that some of you look at coming from your different perspectives, so it is very enlightening for me. But I've noticed we kick the can a lot of times down the road to another meeting because if that information came out ahead of time, then we could probably have staff address it at that meeting or before, if there was enough, so that could be done. So that's one thing I took away too from talking to other folks. So.
Okay, good.
I just want to say one more thing. I wanted to thank our staff for making the arrangements for us to get there, and it was smooth, to say the least. There were no real hiccups in terms of checking in or anything, and I wanted to thank the commission for allowing us to go. It was worthwhile, and I really appreciate that.
And next year I'd encourage other commissioners to go. It's in Yosemite. Gary?
Okay, something really important about it. Who won the beer and wine contest?
There was none.
There wasn't any this year?
They didn't do it.
They said Mendocino will win again, so we're not going to do it.
Did we bring wine?
We didn't bring wine. They gave us 2 free drink tickets to buy some crappy wine. No. Obviously, I went to a lot of the breakouts as well. Some of the things that I wanted to bring up was there was a lot of discussion on legislative issues like AB 1361. Tribes can enter into service agreements and services provided without LAFCo approval. That was something that we touched on. The other one was SB 448, which the state now has approved to list all the inactive special districts. And we should be able to get a copy of that if there's any in Mendocino County. And I believe UMA also handed out some other related bills that they went over. There was a lot of discussion on the Little Hoover report. CALAFCO felt very pleased with the results. They got a lot of the things that they wanted to get in there with regard to special districts. So They thought they had 90% of what they wanted. Some of the things, again, on the in the LAFCo 101, which I've been many times and I keep learning new things, is one of the biggest issues that we run into, and I know a lot of the bigger counties run into, is litigation. And some of the common problems with litigation is not having proper notice, making all the findings and trying to find evidence. In other words, this is a problem and this is how we solve it. And a lot of times they just bring up the problem without solving it or coming up with a recommendation. And allowing a fair hearing and avoiding bias and conflict of interest. If we can eliminate those kinds of things, then we eliminate a lot of the litigation that happens. Beth?
Did you mean when you said something about notice, the first point, was that like public hearing notices?
Yeah, but notices
Legal
where people
notices?
aren't noticing things correctly.
Okay.
And which I believe we do a good job, but
We do, but there's
a
also
lot
room
of
for-
places we're finding that an attorney that would be the first thing the attorney looks for is wasn't properly noticed. But as Kevin mentioned, there's lots of litigation going on in some of the bigger areas. And of course, they've got bigger problems on how to fund LAFCO. And I was really impressed with a lot of that. There was like 7 cities within probably the Ukiah Valley that they share sheriff, they share planning and building. They mapping and all that. So they get together and share these kinds of things rather than having, now we look at that every time for shared services, but even today's Fort Bragg, there's shared services in there because of county doing their plan checks and whatnot. Sheriffs, we need to start looking at where the sheriff could benefit rather than a police department.
Point Arena.
Point Arena, there we go. So anyway, those are the things that I learned in my breakout as well. So it was very informative. Like I said, I enjoy it every time. It's unfortunately, though, I've been there several times and I keep seeing all the new faces. There's a lot of turnover in LAFCOs, except for the executive officers. But everybody there is new. I mean, they even what they put on your guys' deal?
Yeah, new.
First timers or
Yeah.
something. So there's a lot of those people, and of course they're learning it all over again. Carrie?
Yeah, I appreciate this LAFCO related bills, the summary. And AB 1361 that was passed and signed into law. Actually, there wasn't anything, and this occurred with Hopland Community Service District with the Hopland tribe.
Mm-hmm.
But it was done through, I believe, the California Public Drinking Division Department, Water Department, and State Water Resources Control Board, demanding that the tribe be able, as a part of their water right, have potable water from Hopland.
So that was the way they avoided LAFCO at that time. Okay.
Because it never came here.
It never did, no, until the MSR actually brought it forward to
Yep.
us, yes.
Right. Carol?
Don't we have an unsettled problem with the tribes up in Covelo and the water district there?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I did talk to Scott Brown about that, ask him where he was, and he was asking of me or us if that's still an issue, and I said, as far as I'm concerned, it still is.
'Cause
We'd
it-
like
you
to
know,
have
it's
that
fallen off
report,
the
because he was
agenda.
working on that with other counties as well. And we've already paid him for some of that
Doesn't
time.
work.
And I told him it's still I'm still interested in seeing that, because it's gonna be an issue.
Well, we need to,
We need that,
yeah.
that direction.
Yeah.
Okay, I think the last thing, Uma, did you want to add to?
I just wanted to add that with Bill Connolly remaining on the board, that Northern California, he'll be eligible for sitting on the executive committee, which will be the first time that a Northern California representative will be eligible in quite some time. So that was one positive thing.
And I like to end it just saying that, not only are you meeting other people from CALAFCO, but sitting down with Kevin and Jerry and Uma and talking about family and friends, and you get to know your fellow commissioners a lot better as well. you're sitting there having lunch or or in between breakout sessions and talk to each other. It was really nice.
You need to take us all out to lunch.
Not all of us.
Okay, we'll go to McDonald's. Anyway, I really enjoyed that, and it was nice talking to you guys, and we happened to we were able to watch the World Series in the evenings too. And Kevin and I were rooting for, we're the only rooters down there for Houston. Okay, other commissioner reports?
I bet, being in Southern California.
Yeah.
Quickly, I would just like to thank all the fire districts for responding to the emergencies within the county of Mendocino, and for the county response as well. There were great difficulties, of course, in communication, but we did get through that, and I think, you know, the fire districts did, considering the fire hurricane, outstanding job. Sorry for the loss of life. That's usually what we try to avoid, but in that kind of situation, it was
It could have
very
been worse.
difficult.
Could have
Yeah.
been a lot worse.
And I would just note that the use of a gravel road, Tomkai Road, with stream crossings is something Brick Trails will also face, because our current recognized second outlet is Sherwood Road north to Laytonville.
One thing I wanted to bring up before we get to the CALAFCO business report, it was mentioned to me about having other agencies provide exact wording of their proposed motions or approved motions. Is that something that we'd like to see in our minutes, the exact motion described? Uma, did you bring that up, or is that something you brought about?
Was it the minutes or the agenda or the staff report?
It would be in the minutes of what the actual motion was.
I thought it was in the staff, I thought the staff report would have a recommended action written out.
Mhm.
And then the
But on our minutes,
alternatives,
so for,
and then the minutes would reflect that, whatever action was taken.
Yeah.
John?
And
Well,
Don't I
that
usually
might make it easier 10 years from now if the, you know, if the commissioner says, I move the recommended motion, and then staff could simply include the totality of the recommended motion in the minutes.
that's what I was getting at.
Yeah, I mean, that'd
I-
simplify someone in the future determining, well, what was the
Right,
recommended action?
right, you have to look back at the agenda summary.
And obviously, if there's any modification of the recommended action, that would be noted as in the minutes as part of the motion.
Teresa?
Don't our minutes already include the actual motion?
Yeah, to my best recollection, I never just say the recommended action.
You never do.
I could be wrong, but I strive to always put the details in there, because as an administrator looking back at old records, I've had that same issue.
along those lines, the staff reports are a little different this time. I did put the recommendation up front and,
Yeah, I saw that.
and
That
wrote
was
that
good.
out. So
Yeah.
if there
On the
is,
agenda.
I was just curious,
there
I'm
is
just making
feedback.
sure 5 years from now, we could see the exact motion,
yes.
who did it, who approved it, or seconded it. Okay.
Okay.
All right, we'll move on to item 8E, Upper Russian River Water Agency update. I believe from my discussions that nobody wanted to give an update from the district yet, but they wanted to wait and see till they get a special district representative, but we've got one here.
Right, they have no updates at this time. They welcomed commissioners and staff to attend their meetings, but no official updates.
Well, too bad we don't have Angela here. Huh? All right, we'll go on to 8F, CALAFCO Business and Legislative Report.
I don't have anything really that we didn't cover already, except that I did provide a copy of the legislative update that you have as a handout, and that's came from the conference. And I'm happy to follow up on anything if anyone has questions about specific bills.
Okay. Does anybody in the audience want to ask us any questions or needing clarification? You want to know what LAFCO does? Well, hopefully you learned a little bit. Thank you for being here. Beth?
In regards to Commissioner Doble's comment about the electronic devices, if any of you would like to change the email address that you receive communications on from LAFCo, please let me know. And if any of you use my personal email address, if you could delete that and just use the clerk one for LAFCO, that would simplify as well. I don't think there's too much of that, though.
Okay. All right. We will adjourn. An hour and 20 minutes, not bad.